Hello! I'm sure you've seen the new Twilight X ColourPop collab that has recently come out. I saw that my dear friend Hot Vegan Hannah posted on Instagram stories talking about wanting to dupe it. So I reached out to her saying I also wanted to dupe it and asked if she wanted to dupe it together in like a video collaboration. So that is what we are going to be doing today. I have pulled out some colors that I think go well with the vibe of the palette, but I figured we would kick it old school today and I would build the palette IRL with you all to see my process for like what stays and what goes. In full discretion, I used to be very into Twilight when the movies were coming out. I was perfect age for it, like late middle school into early high school when those movies were coming out. I loved the books. I will say as an adult, don't love the books as much and haven't seen the movies in a really long time, but the color story just in general is very inspiring for this palette. So I'm going to try to dupe it loosely. I don't think I'm going to 100% try to get like my perfect matches for each shade, but I definitely am inspired by the aesthetic of the palette, and that's what we're going to try to recreate today. I haven't seen Hannah's palette, so I'm really excited to see what she comes up with. Be sure to check the link down in my bio to watch her video and subscribe to her channel if you somehow aren't already. And with all of that out of the way, if you want to watch me build a palette, then go ahead and just keep on watching and subscribe. So I know I kind of trolled you all by having the sparkly shadows out first, but I figure it's better to just rip the band-aid off, pick out the mattes, and move on. I feel like the different promos and videos and things I've seen of this palette is making it a little hard to discern what some of these shades actually look like. So I've pulled out quite a few. We've got a lot of browns that at first glance look very, very similar, but to me, they're different. And so we're going to swatch through them, figure out which one I want. For this first like light bluish matte, I am kind of in between two shades. This one is from Menagerie. I forget what it's called. This is Small Spaces. So we've got that, and we also have this shade from the Simply Posh Fairy Tale Fairies palette. This one's a little more like sky blue. I feel like the one in the palette looks like it's a little bit murkier, so I think we're going to go with Menagerie for this first matte. The next matte we've got is a cool tone brown. I first want to swatch this one because this is actually from ColourPop, so it feels fitting to put it in this palette. And I do think that the color is pretty close. Let's try this one too. This is from Dandelions. This one's a little bit grayer and also a little lighter. How about this guy? This one might be a little bit pinkier. I definitely feel like this last shade is a little too pinky brown. This middle one, I don't know, I'm between these two. Knowing my own preferences and the fact that we're going to put a deeper brown, I think I'd rather have the lighter brown just so that way it gives me more range to work with. So we're going to go with Dandelions Co. This is the shade Apple Butter. Now we've got a deeper kind of true blue. I'm thinking that this one, based on the swatches at least, is going to be perfect. Yeah, that looks pretty freaking perfect. I feel like there's no reason to even swatch any of these others. This is the Sydney Grace shade Nightfall. Now we've got the shade Nightfall. Oh no, wait, we've got 17, which I feel like in the pan looks like it's more of this kind of shade, but then in the swatches, it looks a lot deeper. I'm thinking that this may be a good one. But I don't know, it's so deep for that first shade. That's kind of why I pulled out some of these others. Let's see what this one looks like. I honestly, too, I want to compare these to this shade just to make sure I'm not getting anything that's too overlapping. How deep is this one? Because there's another green that's like really, really dark and vampy. And again, I want to make sure that anything that we're getting isn't too similar to each other. Let's go ahead and swatch this one too. See if that's maybe something. I'm almost kind of leaning towards, I don't know, the swatches, it looks like these two Sydney Grace shades. I just feel like the Sydney Grace shade is like a more true deep green, but I think that this one maybe is too true of green. Although, you know what? Maybe it should be these two. How about we start with that? And if we need to, we can always come back. So this is the shade Turtle Bay from Sydney Grace, which I feel like looks a lot deeper IRL than it does in the swatches on their website. And then this is another one of those Fairy Tale Fairies depotted shades from Simply Posh. And just to confirm that these two aren't too close, I'm going to swatch this here. Yeah, I feel like those are pretty far apart, so I'm okay to have both of these in there. We are missing some of that depth, but what I think I might do is put this really deep kind of greenish shade as our black that's in the palette, because I don't really want to have a true black. I also have a kind of like satin black though, so okay, you know what? I was just looking at, I've been kind of mostly referencing the swatch photos, but then I just pulled up the photo of like the palette itself, and these two look so similar to the pictures in the palette that I feel like I gotta keep both of these. It also seems like the black is way more shimmery in the picture of the palette, which makes me think that maybe I should just pull out that black satin. I just pulled out this black satin from some of the other palettes I have with potential shades for this BYOP. Here is this one, and you can see it's definitely not super sparkly, but there is a sheen to it. This is also from Sydney Grace. It's depotted from, I think, the Where the Wildflowers Grow palette. So I'm going to go ahead and use this, and I think it'll be a more fun way to smoke out looks if I want to with this color story. That means for mattes, we've just got one lone dark brown left. And this is another one that I feel like in the palette itself looks like maybe a little bit rosier than it does in the swatches. So I pulled out these two as potentials. Since there's so much green, I feel like I'm going to go with this brown just because I feel like it will work better with those green tones. This is depotted from the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural palette. Starting off with the special sparkly beautiful shades, we've got 3 at the top of this palette that look dangerously similar in both the swatches and the pictures of the palette on the ColourPop website. So the way that I'm thinking about this is kind of one more like white iridescent kind of shade, one more like soft greenish silver kind of shade, and then one soft like pinky purple kind of silver shade. That's the way that I'm choosing to view them, as like a little bit different at least. So let's start with like the straight up like silvery white. So first up, this is the shade Fake Snow from Dandelions Co. It's a shame because I feel like it's not picking up on camera as well as it does in real life. It's basically got like no base color to it, and it just has like a white and silver and gold sparkle throughout. So I thought that might be a good one. I've also got this one. This is from the Treasure Pop-Up palette from Shine by SD, which I know Hannah isn't really a huge fan of. I am one of the people who really loves that palette. This is the shade Precious from it, and this is just like a silvery glossy white. I feel like that one may be our winner, but let's see what else we've got. Next, we've got Ice Blink. This is in collaboration with Seeking Shifts, my friend Riley, with Shine by SD. This one is similar but more complex than Precious. So it's got like a blue and silver sparkle throughout, and then in the base it's got an orange to green iridescent multi-chrome. And I feel like you can really see how complex it is when it's shining. I don't think I'm going to be able to show the shifts of the base color within it, but I definitely can see that it goes to a green depending on the angle. And then the last one I have is Cake Bomb. This is from Devinah. This is more of a silvery bluish teal that then shifts to a pink. And I should say the sparkles and Ice Blink shift to a pink as well. So very colorful, but also like neutral, you know, silvery, sparkly kind of shade. All four are beautiful. I feel like if we're going with the one that's closest to the color pop, it's probably Precious. But if I'm making my own version and I'm making the rules, I think I actually do want to go with Ice Blink. I didn't think I was going to want to go with this, but I feel like the blue sparkle and the green shift in the multi-chrome base really tie in well to the blues and greens that are predominant in this palette. So I'm going to go with Ice Blink. Now we've got our more true silvery kind of shade. First up, we've got Moonshine from Terra Moons. This is one that I think, like, just off the bat, this is probably what I'm going to lean towards, but you never know. So let's swatch out some others. This is Depotted from BH Cosmetics. I really love the BH Cosmetics shimmer formula. So it's just like kind of a light pink with a silvery reflect on it. Then we've got this one from Shine by SD. This is one of their like mystery shades, so I'm not sure if it's around anymore, but let me tell you what it's called just in case. This is Beautiful Mystery 19. This one, a little bit more base color to it, a little purpley, but it's got like a multicolored sparkle throughout it. It has like, I see kind of like a gold, blue, pink. It's got a lot going on. It's really pretty. Coming over here, we've got some that are a little bit lighter, but definitely leaning a little bit more purple as well. This one is from Pretties for Your Face. It is called Fairy Frost. It's a really nice, like, just kind of shimmer, their standard shimmer formula, so it's kind of sheeny. Next up, this one is one from Glam Shop. I don't remember what it's called. I'll check once I'm done with this swatch. But this one, again, more purpley and, you know, definitely silver as well. Oh, oops, wrong one. Sorry. This is Noxious from Glam Shop. We've got another Glam Shop shade. This is a dupe for JD Glow, Good God. I didn't want to pull that one out, though, because it's in such a giant, massive pan. So I grabbed this one instead. This is the shade Celtic from Glam Shop. All really beautiful options. This is a tough one. The last one I'll go ahead and swatch for this set is another Pretties for Your Face shade. This is called Sweetness. In truth, I would probably use this for a different shade if I do end up using it in the palette. Oh man, let me sit and like just stare at these for a second. Let me try to come to a conclusion. For this one, I decided I'm going to stick to my guns, what I initially thought I would use. I'm going to use Moonshine from Terra Moons. It's a shade I don't use very often, and I feel like it just works so well with this color story that I gotta pull it out. For our last really light shade in the palette, I want to do something more green for sure. This first shade is Cauldron from Pretties for Your Face. It's one of my favorites. I mean, look at that. Do you see? Oh my God, that is so beautiful. They have like changed to this more sparkly formula, and I'm here for it. That's a separate video though. Pretties for Your Face swatches coming soon. Okay, other options. Let's go ahead and swatch this. This is Splash from Looxi. Oh man, I have not used this in a while, and every time I swatch it, I'm just like gaga, so beautiful. Okay, that's definitely a contender. I pulled out this shade. This is Depotted from a Pat McGrath palette, like one of the Bridgerton collab palettes. I bought that on sale and then proceeded to immediately depot it. I thought that this really matched the vibe of this color story, but it's definitely like the least interesting of these shades. Speaking of depotting, this is Depotted from like a little Milani pastel palette, and I think that this is really pretty. I honestly think that this one's a little bit more interesting than the Pat McGrath. It's got like a more minty base rather than like a green, and then it's got a gold sheen on top. So it kind of ends up looking the same color as the Pat McGrath, but to me it's got a little bit more dimension. We've got this one. This is from Bernovich. It's a very similar color, just like a little bit more blue, but it again has that kind of like golden sheen on top. Then we've got one from Pretties for Your Face. This one is like way more golden and gray. So it's like got a really truly like gray kind of green base. And then it's got that strong gold shift on top. This is the shade Pussycat. And then the last one I wanted to test out, this is Adonis from Looxi. And I felt like this could be close too. Ooh, you know, I'm actually really liking Adonis in here. I feel like I don't have anything that goes to that like greeny gold kind of shift, although I guess really all of these do. The one that does the least is Cauldron, which is a shame because it's also like the most beautiful. But I feel like this is going to be a shade that I end up using for the inner corner, so I want something that can be used in that way, which kind of makes me rule out anything with like a deeper base like Splash or even Pussycat, like Outside of the Light has a pretty strong base, as does Cauldron. I'm struggling to like capture it outside of the light. I'm not sure if you can see here, but it does have a base color, so that makes me stray away from that. I think I'm going to go with Looxi Adonis. I thought I was going to go with one of these middle ones more, but I'm digging this. I think that that's going to be a very useful shade within this palette. Let's go ahead and now knock out these blurple colors. We've got 3 of them, and honestly, in the swatches and in the palette, they look very similar. So I think I'm going to have a lot of wiggle room with this to kind of like create some more differences within these shades. So we've got a lot here. I have a few like really deep, dark, vampy blues. I'm not sure if I want to actually use any of these in this palette because these are shades that I find really hard to work with. This is the shade, man, I cannot even read this, but it's this shade from Pretties for Your Face. I got this one because I asked for requests. If you don't know, I'm now an affiliate with Pretties for Your Face, and I was asking for requests for what shades you all wanted to see swatched. And this one was requested by Lou. Shout out to Lou. I'll link them below. But this one, really pretty. But with this black satin, I feel like it's serving a similar function. And so I just think this one's not going to make its way in there, but I still want to swatch it because, I mean, who doesn't want to swatch all these beautiful shadows? We've also got this one, which is from the Touch of Glam, like Half Baked, I think it is, palette. This was given to me by Riley. I appreciate her so much. And this one, again, really deep, a lighter, like smoky gray base with a blue kind of shimmer on top. But inside this, it's got a lot of different colors. I see blue, purple, green, pink. Really, really beautiful. More interested in this, but still not certain. Let's keep testing stuff. This is a Looxi shade that came out with their most recent collection that both Hannah and I really disliked. This is the shade Mad Energy, and I will say, I think for the sake of this palette, this is kind of like a perfect shade. And it seems really similar to the vibes of the palette. So I'm really toying with the idea of pulling this one out and trying to get some more use out of it, form some opinions. So that's a maybe. This one I think is Oracle. Yes, this is Oracle from Shine by SD. This one was gifted to me by Riley as well. And this one, we've got more of like an actual purple base. And then on top, we've got like pink to gold to green to a little blue in all of the shifts. Of course, this is not in the ColourPop palette, but it's magical and I love it. So it's here as an option for me. Now we've got another classic Pretties for Your Face shade. This is Solstice. This one even more of a true purple base with a blue sheen on top. So I figured, again, definitely a looser interpretation, but still an option. This is Birthday Girl from Sydney Grace. It's a multi-chrome that they have. This one has like a blue-gray kind of base to it. And then on top, it's got like this pinky purple that goes to like a gold and a little green. Again, I am just completely, even more so than normal, unable to capture shifts. But do you see how like reflective it looks in the light? That looks crazy. I will say the texture of these Sydney Grace multi-chromes is a lot thicker than their normal shades even, and a little bit flakier, but it does look really reflective when it's built up, or it can be like kind of more sheared out. I'm still playing around with these. I bought a couple of them and then they sent me like I think 2 more, so I'm testing them out, but that's an option. Although I don't know, maybe it's not an option because I also feel like this looks really close to like the base color in Moonshine. Yeah, I definitely can't put both of those in there. So no birthday girl. This is a really light blue. This is the shade Lilac You a Lot from Kristen Lee. This one, I think it's honestly probably too sheer. Yeah, I don't think I can throw that in there. It's not giving what I need it to give. I need something more like true blue. So this is another Pretties for Your Face shade. This one, oh gosh, I have so many from them now. I like struggle to keep track of which is which. This is Moonchild. It's again more purpley, really deep, like vampy kind of plum base with a green shift on top. But again, I just think it kind of fits the vibe. This one was sent to me by my friend Olivia. This is from Pastel Roses. She had 2 of them, and so she sent one to me. It is a really interesting kind of gray shade as well. This one, though, a lot deeper in the base than Moonshine is, and it's got like a teal to pink kind of shift within it. It's really interesting. This one's called Ghostly. Next, we've got another Pastel Roses shade. This is one I bought. I think this is a really beautiful and unique shade. This is called Nightfall. It's a very dry, kind of flaky formula overall that comes from Pastel Roses, and this is no different. But you can see it's kind of got like a indigo almost base, like a purpley blue base, but then it's got this like tealy green blue shift on top that then shifts to a purpley pink as well. That one is really interesting. I don't know if it maybe fits the best with this palette color story, but I really want to put it in there. This one is from Looxi. This is, what is this one called? This one's Waterfall? No, Nightfall. This is Nightfall. This one looks like the most legit, like would be in the palette kind of shade. And then we'll go ahead and swatch Sweetness again as well. And honestly, I want to swatch this one too. This is Terra Moon's Enceladus. This one is like Splash, but it's got a lot deeper of a base. And so because of that, I feel like it probably fits a little bit better in this category. I knew that this palette would be a little bit more challenging for me to dupe because I don't have a ton of blues. If you don't know, it's like one of my least favorite colors to wear. I feel like it really washes out my blue eyes. So I'm finding it really hard. I feel like I don't have anything that's quite perfect, you know? But I think I'm leaning towards using this shade from Looxi, Mad Energy. It just, color-wise, is so perfect for the palette. I feel like it would be a mistake not to use it. I also feel like we do need something really true blue, and that makes me want to use Nightfall as well. It looks really similar to like a lot of what I'm seeing in the palette. But this third one is the one that I'm having the most difficulty with. I honestly kind of want to just say screw it and use Oracle. I feel like the base color is pretty similar to Mad Energy, and maybe it like would make better sense to use something that's a little bit more different. But I really like that this multi-chrome shifts to a green because I feel like it ties in those greens and blues really well in this color story. And so I think I'm just going to put it in there. And if I want to change it, I can. All right, so that leaves us with just 2 shimmers left. You'll see, though, I have 3 spots. I might throw in an extra shade. I have some 15 pan palettes that I could have used, but I felt like this one kind of matched the aesthetic the best, so I just did this. So we might throw in an extra shade. First, though, we've got to deal with this green situation. And if I'm going true to the palette, I think that this is probably my closest option. This is Rainbow Blossom from Devinah. And I mean, that looks pretty spot on. I'll swatch them just to show you, but I feel like that's probably going to be it. This is the shade Witch's Brew from Looxi. This one is really deep, kind of like grungy brownish plum base with a green on top. And the green is a very true green on top, but that plum base does kind of change the vibe. We also have Life of the Party. This is another one that is very true green, but then it has that red base on it as well. This also swatches horribly. You really need a glitter glue to use this shadow. This is from Shine by SD, but I'll do my best to swatch it for you so that way you can see at least. That one has that base a little less. So I feel like I could use that a little bit easier, but honestly, I think I'd rather use Rainbow Blossom. This one is from Dandelions Co. I think it's called like Avertine or something like that. I'll pull up the name after I swatch it with my thumb like a complete weirdo. Ignore me. Let's confirm. Yeah, Aventurine. I might not be saying that right. I don't know that word. And then this one is Depotted. This is Depotted from the Druid palette from Fantasy Cosmetica, also sent to me by Riley. Again, shout out to Riley. But I think that one's a little too like bright green, so I think I was right, that Rainbow Blossom. Now I pulled out a lot of like silvery kind of taupes, and I think I could use any of them. But in truth, I honestly don't even want to swatch all of them because I feel pretty confident that I'm going to use this one. This is the shade Iron Throne from Copacetic, and I think this one is beautiful. It's a like more flaky kind of piecey shade, but it does lay down and it doesn't look super flaky on the eyes. It just looks really sparkly. It's got that deep kind of taupey brown base with a silver and blue sparkle within it. It's really beautiful. I feel like the others that might be the closest would be this one. I think it's called Mushroom from Glam Shop, but it's just so much less spectacular. And then I pulled out Tiara from Sydney Grace, but I feel like this one is more metallic and I want something super sparkly and fabulous. This one is probably closer to what's in the actual palette, but I'm going with Iron Throne. It does look a little weird to just have this gap, and I've got a bunch of beautiful shadows, so I might as well just pick one and throw it in there. I'll swatch the palette as like a whole, and then I'll add the shade in, just that way you can see if you really care about it being the same number of pans. In truth, I could have just used all three of these palettes and had like the super extended version of the Twilight color story, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, one random shade. What do I feel like is missing the most from this? I feel like we've got a little bit more representation with these greens than we do in the palette. So that makes me want to stick with something maybe more on this side of the color story. I'm immediately drawn to Ferric, although this again has a really dark base that I feel like could be replicated with this like kind of satin shade, but I don't have anything that shifts like this in this palette. This is from Clionadh. It's got like a really piecey silver sparkle throughout, but then it also has like an orange to gold to green kind of shift in it as well. I also, though, keep looping back around to something like Enceladus from Terra Moons or Splash from Looxi, just because I think that these are really beautiful ones. I feel like Splash is a little too light for everything else that exists in this color story still. So I'm kind of between Ferric or Enceladus. But looking at what we already have, I just feel like there's so much that kind of falls into this realm of Enceladus that I think I would rather have Ferric. So I'm just going to stick that in there. I know it's a rectangle amongst a bunch of squares, so that's a little unsatisfying, but you know, whatever. I'm going to go ahead, reorganize these to match the layout a little bit better of the color pop, although again, won't be exact because mine is a 4x4 rather than a 5x3. So I'm going to organize it, come back, and we'll swatch the whole thing out and do some final thoughts. All right, I am back, and I went ahead and arranged the colors in the order that they are in the palette. It's just like instead of this one being here, it's down here, so on and so forth. But linearly, they are the same. So let's go ahead and swatch it out. I'm so excited to see how it all looks together. So first up, again, this is the shade Ice Blink from Shine by SD in collaboration with Seeking Shifts. Oh, juicy. Next, we've got Small Spaces from Menagerie. Now we have Moonshine from Terra Moons. Adonis, also from Looxi. Apple Butter from Dandelions Co. Mad Energy from Looxi. Rainbow Blossom from Devinah. Turtle Bay from Sydney Grace. Iron Throne from Copacetic Cosmetics. A Depotted Matte from the Mountain Trail palette from Sydney Grace. And then a Depotted Matte from the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural palette. Oracle from Shine by SD. And I believe that this shade was in collaboration with M. Jones 15 and Bizzarvolta. Then we've got this shade from Sydney Grace. I'm blanking on what this one's called. Nightfall. Ooh, wow, we've got 2 Nightfall shades in this palette. One from Looxi and one from Sydney Grace. Then last but not least, we've got another depotted shade from Sydney Grace. And this is like our dupe of the palette. But of course, I'm going to swatch my one extra shade. And my extra shade is Ferric from Clionadh. Look at that finger swatch. It is juicy. And there's that last shade. I feel like it really does tie the palette together really nicely. I'll go ahead and pop up the ColourPop swatches in comparison to mine as well, just so that way we can see how close I was. It's definitely not perfect, but I am really happy with my version, and I'm super excited to play with it. I also am very excited to see Hannah's video on her palette. She has such an eye for color, and I'm really excited to see which of her shades end up in the collection. But let me know what you think of my palette and hers down in the comments below. I appreciate all of you for watching all the way through the end. And until I see you next time, I hope that you stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye!